Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and half of this episode is grass and the other half is not. I just thought that'd be an interesting way to start off talking here. I am back! This is episode whatever the heck. We're rapidly approaching our next run session. I'll try and figure out when that is, and thankfully I already have the map for it. I haven't taken a look at the map, but I already have the map. And I desperately needed something to do that wasn't grass, so that's why we do something completely different in the second half of the episode. You guys will see what I'm talking about coming up shortly. Anyways, one of the last things we have to work on is, of course, the fiddly bits, because you leave it for last because it's not really that important. And most of that is grass right now. Of course, I did the power lines, and the rest of the big scenery is done, and I'm not the guy who does all the little finicky stuff. I mostly leave it to Weibold to put the incredible detail that he does into his areas, and that's awesome, but I just ain't got time for that, and so that's why I'm going over with the grass and just sort of saying, okay, well, this is good enough, and moving right along from there. And so I'm covering up these areas, and of course I've sort of color-coded where the certain kinds of grass will go, and that was in my plan all along, sort of. I did it much more definingly elsewhere, but now that I've actually figured out what I want to do with things, I don't necessarily have to plan so far ahead. So, we're going to do the grass on the inside, and then the grass on the outside, and then we're going to find something else to do, and if you'll notice there, If you notice there, I covered over the tracks, and I was going to say that isn't accidental, because that section is abandoned. It's used as sort of a tuck-in track if somebody's going by and the other person's, has to get out of the way, but it really isn't used that often. And you'll see, coming up here in a bit, I cover over a lot of the tracks over the central interchange because they just aren't used either. It's the kind of thing where we, this, as has been said, this is it was a much larger network that's been cut down to the size it currently is. So, again, this is boring, and this is why I didn't want to do a whole episode on it. So, I finished up what I wanted to do over there, so I came to here to work on this section, and this means that the only actual town section, the only area we're probably going to be looking at in terms of actual Iron Horseman Chronicles filming, that means that 2 out of the 3 towns will be done. And that leaves only the shoreline, which so far doesn't get a lot of featuring in episodes, but I will work on it some more probably next episode, so that I don't go crazy over grass. Although I might do more generic stuff during the first half of next episode and do more interesting stuff during the second half of next episode. That's assuming next episode isn't a run session. Let me figure out what number this is real quick. You can watch me fill in these grassy areas, and I'm using different kinds of grass based on the ground texture, as I said. This is 131, we have 132, which is the next episode, and then the following episode is 133, and that is the Hazel Northeastern run session. Actually, because I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to... Oh, we found a nice gate there. If I'm going to postpone that or move it up. It depends on how things are going. Obviously, it doesn't take a lot of effort for me to record a run session. It is just as time-consuming, if not more time-consuming, than a regular, episode like this. But there I can really play with the amount of time I'm doing something, Either way, I can break it up, or this, that, and the other. But what I'm trying to say is, if I need to get work done in a section of the route, I'm going to prioritize that, and you unfortunately are going to have to wait another week for the run session. But I don't plan on that happening. I'm probably just going to stick to the schedule. Whoa! Stick to the schedule as is. Whoops. Sorry. So, filling in the green areas with green grass, and the brown areas with brown grass, and the tan areas with tan grass, and then sort of looking out over our things. Now, you'll notice the next half of the episode is marginally more interesting, but it's also kind of herky-jerky in that, okay, I was trying to find cows. I didn't find 3D cows. I'm sure those are 3D cows, but they're individual 3D cows, and I really wasn't a big fan of that, so I wasn't a big fan of placing 100 different cows. So I'm really not sure what I'm going to do there. I'll figure it out. I might just leave the field blank, because honestly, who cares that much? And so I'm doing very good to paint within the lines here, and put the grass where it's supposed to be, and then I stop doing that, and start covering over the ends, block that in with some greener grass, block into the areas where the tracks were, and then once again painting within the lines. There are two real sections that we care about here, and it's the one that stretches to the left and the one that stretches to the right, because there aren't a lot of trains that go across. And by aren't a lot of, I mean trains don't do that here. There are exactly two trains on the system, and one goes left and one goes right, and that is the entirety of how this works. They run to Providence at the end of the day, and out of Providence at the beginning of the day, and yeah. It's a very underused system. It's sort of like the UK ghost trains, which we'll talk about in the Terminus podcast, which is coming out after the timetable, which is coming out after this. The reason the timetable is so late and the Terminus is so late is because I promised I'd get this out first, and I was busy. So, I could have easily sat down and taken the 15 minutes to do the timetable at some point today, but I had to dedicate the hour blocks for working on this, and I was doing a lot of small things that it was like, okay, well, I can sit down and do the timetable, or I can just sort of do something else real quick, and then hopefully save enough time for working on this, and then set up the podcast. Which I actually did the second half of this episode after the podcast, which is coming in just a second. So in about an hour I gave up on... About an hour went by, I gave up on working on trackage, and decided to move on. So here we are, in... by trackage I mean grass. Here we are placing tiles. Got that right there. This is L8. This is a connection on the other side, the eastern division of the Iron Horseman Railroad. And so slot that into place. Not actually going to put it into place because Wybold's still working on it. Currently as we speak, as a matter of fact. And I was just sort of gauging where it was so I could build around it. And I got rid of that, and I made that little corner there so I had a way to slot it in. And this whole time I was on screen sharing on Skype with people, with Wybold included, and showing them exactly what I was doing and trying to block out, okay, well, one of the later things was, okay, we're going to put this river here, you're going to connect the tracks here, and this, that, and the other. So right now I'm just sort of working with the tiles, slimming down, working around, trying to figure out where the things are going to go. Clicked on that by accident, didn't mean to. Once again, slotting it in and figuring out, okay, where is it touching after those extra additions of tiles? And that was it right there. Alright, so I got the base height, and I've talked about how that works before. And I figured I'd block out an area here and start using copy-paste, which is exactly what I do. Boop, 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 boop. So, that's that, and I end up blocking this whole area, and a couple of times I get fed up with the fact that my brush is really kind of small, and so I make a bigger brush, and this causes lag, but I can deal with that. It just gets the job done faster because it's a bigger brush, or at least it feels like it does. Just sort of getting the corners and the edges first and filling in the middle afterwards so that I don't miss something at the edge. And there are more than a few areas that we do revisit in terms of tiling and things like that, because after I get this up to 100, my job definitely isn't done yet. Just sort of the technique of sitting in one place and blocking out everything you can see without having to move the camera around, it makes for easier work. More efficient. It's the efficiency. There we go. And I think that's all that done, and so I block this out here, screw up the river by accident like that, and just go, okay, well, I'll fix that in a second. Go in here with a smaller brush and touch it up. It's a little bit rough, but oh well, what are you going to do? I was tempted to not overwrite the map and make a new one, but I decided to anyways because my map file is very cluttered. And here's me looking on this, figuring out exactly where the edge of the thing is. Alright, there we are. And so I go to put some tiles down so I can get a better angle on where these tracks are. And after I put the tracks in, I put some more tiles down so I get better coverage between, you know, where the edge is and not, basically. I build a little horseshoe curve looking thing. Put the double track, of course. You've seen me do this part before, but it was exceptionally relieving to not be building grass. I'm not sure you guys understand. You guys probably understand completely if you've built large swaths of ground that all look vaguely the same, and more than vaguely the same, let's be honest, and are just doing the same thing again and again. It's so much nicer to do something not flat, you know, something not... I mean, then again, that isn't flat, but I've already done everything that's, you know, not terrain. Or, I've already done the terrain, I should say. And so I make this river, it's unearthly straight right there by the city, but I can get over that. And I run it by the tracks here, and ask Wybold where it goes. If he was going to run it into town, I eventually changed my mind, ran it by town. Of course, he wasn't running into town anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so I ran it by town, and I run it there, and then we realized we had a river coming into town, and that's something we sorted out later. So here we go with the track adjustment, and eventually I was doing it all from this end. Sorry. Originally I was doing it all from this end. I decided to raise everything to this level and do it from, not do it from the other end, but do it the other way round. So here we are, adjusting to approximately 1.5%, and I didn't decide to do the math and see, so I just sort of winged it. 1.5 is the steepest allowable on the main line outside of the summit grade anyways, and a couple of places where we simply just couldn't do with 1.5. It was impossible. So I had to go with approximately 2. But they're very short sections. Alright, so we've got this here. You know what I actually need to look at? I need to look at something on the Iron Horseman dock real quick. Get rid of the Terminus dock. This isn't what I want right now. It occurs to me the episode is going to end in 1 minute, so I need to do this real quick before something bad happens. I don't know what bad would happen. I'm just bringing this down. I realize it actually lines up quite well, as a matter of fact. It does very well in terms of getting down to the right place at the right time. And I was proud of that, just, you know, and it's not even like I guessed at something, it's just how it worked out. Alright, so we got that flattened, and what do I do next? Oh, that's right, I just sort of make it a little bit less wibbly-wobbly. I'm trying to look at some heights. You know what I need? I need Sugar Creek. It's only 100 feet up? Okay. See, and Jader had a lot of trouble getting that where he needed it to be. Oh, I can understand that. It's not a far distance at all. It's about a 1.5 all the way there, possibly a little bit more too. So. Alright, so, and here's me adjusting, just sort of straightening the curves and curvening the straights and making things more like a railroad instead of a, 5th grader or 5-year-old drawing. Trim it out.